Hello and welcome to Scrapbooking Station. In this video we're going to make 6 Halloween cards from a single sheet of 12 by 12. So I've created a one sheet wonder, which is basically a road map, and we're going to be putting together, or I'm going to be putting together, you're going to be watching, create 6 Halloween cards. So I'm going to put the camera over my shoulder and we'll get started. Here's the one sheet wonder that I'm going to be working against for my road map for this collection. So I want the collection to be consistent, so they're all going to be 6.5 by 5 finished cards. And I don't want you to focus too much on the blue for now because I'm going to be building each card one at a time. But the first thing I'm going to do is use my black guidelines. Basically I'm going to cut 6 5.5 by 4 inch panels. And so I want to pick a 12 by 12 piece of paper to do this with, and I am going to use a piece of paper from Stampin' Up's Halloween collection from last year. It was on clearance, so I got myself a set and I got my daughter a set. So this is going to be an easy way to give her some designs as well. So I picked a pattern that is not directional, and this way I don't have, that's one less thing I have to worry about. It is double-sided, so I have a choice on each of my cards which side to go with, or to use both sides of the pattern, and we're going to talk about that in some detail with each card. Of course, it comes with 8 other patterns and 2 specialty papers in this collection. So I got plenty to choose from. There's plenty of colors here. I've got the orange, the gray, the black, white. And of course, if you wanted to, throw in some gray, some purple. Good colors, or some green and some purple. So good colors for Halloween. While I'm at it, I'm going to root around for some accompanying sort of materials that I've got that are Halloweeny. And of course, be using my stamps and specialty papers as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of chop up my panels, and then we'll be back to look at the first card. So I've got my first panel, and we're going to do a raised focal, and as long as I stay true to the style, what I'm going to have is 6 relatively different looking cards, even though I'm really starting with the same basic patterns. So for a 6.5 by 5 inch card, you want to start with a blank that's 6.5 wide by 10 inches, and then you just score it at 5. And I've decided this is going to be a tall book fold, so it's going to open this way. Of course, with this small focal, what I'm going to do is some matte and layering. So I've got a piece of orange. Actually, this is Tangerine Tango. Of course, I cut out the middle because I don't need that. It's going to be covered up. And I've got some basic gray that's going to go on top of that. And then my panel. And that's going to be my top mat. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a raised focal. And so I want to do a pair. So I've got a pair of rectangles. I know that says an oval, but we don't need to kind of stick with that program. And I'm going to want this one up in here, and this one down like so. And all this is stamped. This is an older set from Stampin' Up, carved in candlelit. It's actually from 2004. Did a little masking, so stamped off a pumpkin and then used that to put in my grass faces and the stems. So garden green, Tangerine Tango, and black, and then matted it on black. So this mat is the same size as this mat, but you know what I want inside of this? I want the pattern from this side. So what I'm going to do is take the same rectangle that I used for this, and I'm going to cut a piece out of here because the mat is going to be wider, so I know I've got a little bit of wiggle room. So let me do that, come back with the pieces. The other thing I've done is I've got that ribbon, so I'm going to put the ribbon, and it had yellow pumpkins, so I just used an orange marker to color over that because I don't have any yellow in this particular card. And while I'm at it, it sure would be nice to have a black edge. I don't want to mat another piece of paper, so here's a handy little trick. When I used to edge like this and going around the side, and that is just really silly. So all I'm going to do is carefully, because this is pretty thin paper, I'm going to follow along the edge. The marker really doesn't want to slip, and I get a very thin black edge. And this way I don't have to add a layer of cardstock, but I've still got just that definition in between layers. So I'm going to go around, gut this, come back with the finished pieces, possibly most of the assembly, and we'll continue. I went ahead and completed the first card because we still got 5 more to go. Anyway, so this is the raised focal. So this one, actually I put flat, put the ribbon down, and then put this up on foam square. So for a first card, I think a good start. Then on the inside, just kind of repeating some of the elements from the front. So I've got the larger pumpkin stamped in here. This is actually not ribbon. I copied the ribbon onto plain paper, and that's what I've got here. And then took that 1 inch, remember we had 1 inch from the 12 by 12, a 1 inch border. So I took 5 inches of it, split it in half, so they're each 1/2 inch strips, and then just staggered them. And that's a way to stretch out border pieces, or ribbon pieces, or anything else you want to stretch out. And of course, since I had the dual kind of panel focal, I just split up my salutations. So anyway, like I said, good first one. I'll leave photos. We'll move right into the second project. My roadmap for this card is calling for a raised frame. So I decided to make a circle frame, and actually I'm going to end up making a shaker card. So I cut the circle aperture, and this time I'm using a snow globe cutting die set from Paper Wishes. So it comes with kind of an independent circle frame, and of course the other piece to cut holes. And then you've got the strip, so it's going to be divided up this way. Of course you want to save your interior circle because we can use that on the inside of the card. And originally I was going to do a tall book fold, but I'm going to do a teepee. So I'm going to turn it this way. You know what? This one, I'm going to go something like this. So I've already got that same ribbon I used in the other card. I've got a little bit of a matten layer. So let me get this on the card. I'm going to introduce this piece I have for the backing of that, and I've already got my little shaker elements ready. So let me get a little bit further along, and then I'll be back. So I have my matten layer on, and I chose to go ahead and edge with dazzles because dazzles and acetate work well, and on my focal. What I've got are a pair of dazzles on a circle. So this is another pattern paper from that collection, and just added a solid sort of dot for my grass. So I got him, just kind of put him right on the paper and colored him in. And now he's ready to stick. The other thing, this is reversed, and it's reversed because when I put it on, I had it upside down. Fortunately, it worked. It still works. I would have preferred to have it the other way. Anyway, when I position this, of course, I want to get this guy down first. Oh, I want to talk about this because I saw this on a webisode. What this is self-adhesive foam, and it's 2 layers, and your die cuts will cut through it. And what it does is, instead of using faux squares or sticky tape or whatever, one for a shaker card, and I have a really good seal against my card base, so hopefully things don't go flying out. And the other thing, I don't have to put cardstock behind this paper in order to be a nice, firm, raised mat. Okay, so now we're ready to put this down. I've got the same double-sided sticky that I cut off of here that's going to go back here. I left this flat so that I've got a reference. So I want that pretty flat. I'm going to position this like so. Make sure he's in view. Lift this up. And he's down there really well. Now I'm going to carefully place these and pick up, this is a transfer sheet by the way, so I just went ahead and added a double-sided adhesive. Anyone would do. Of course, die cut with a larger circle. I tend to use larger circles for this piece and also for these pieces, so it gives me a little bit of leeway. You can see you don't have to be spot on because things kind of get covered up back there. The other thing, when you cut the circle, you may as well think about the inside of your card. So the inside of my card is going to be something like this. So rather than just cut a circle out of a scrap, I cut the panel size I needed, and now I've got my interior. So I'm going to finish up. I've got a couple more embellishments, and then I'll be back with the finished card. The finished shaker. So all I've done is add a sentiment and a couple more of the dazzles, so a couple lollipops there for trick-or-treating. And on the inside, I've just got some orange sequins, and then some seed beads in black and orange, and some bugle beads, and then some chunkier green beads. And I don't really mind that the sequins are getting stuck there. If you do, just use some talc powder before you put things in to kind of prevent the stickiness on the edges. But I think that kind of adds to it a little bit. Okay, on the inside, I still got, let me see if I can get the glare now. Okay, I still got acetate. And then I just put some die-cut pumpkins. And these are from Stamping Up. It's a stamp set and cutting die, coordinating cutting dies. So that's another oldie but goodie. Couple more dazzles. Anyway, so shaker card number 2. We're going to do a patchwork next. So let me get set up for that, and I'll be back. What's intended in this third design is to take a single panel, divide it up into blocks, kind of separate them out and mat them, and you would have a finished kind of back panel for your focal on your card front. Do something a little bit different. So I'm going to need 1.5 inch blocks, and I'm just going to pull 3 of them off of my panel from the OSW. And so probably turn one this way. But eventually what I'm going to need is 12 1.5 inch squares. And I'm using a cutting die, and this way I am sure they're exact. This piece is going to go on the inside, so I'm going to throw that away. The other thing you'll need is some sort of grid to work against, because I'm going to permanently attach each of my squares once I decide where I want them to go, using these lines. So they're going to be right corner to corner, and this way I make sure everything's perpendicular and they're going to match up exactly. So I've got different squares from different patterns. I cut a couple extra just in case I want more of one and less of another. And remember, your stripes can go this way, or if you cut a stripe, you can cut a stripe on the diagonal, or you can cut a stripe horizontally or vertically. So anyway, that's something to think about. So I'm going to show you a photo once I get those kind of laid out the way I want them. I'm going to attach them onto this grid paper, and then I'll be back. So after I got the grid all put together, I used a border die to cut strips. So I've got that circling around my card, overlaid it with the patchwork, and then just added the medallion. And so once again, especially if you're on a budget, specialty paper, just get a light colored specialty paper and use your Sharpie markers to get it the right color. So I've got my border. This comes from Tattered Lace. I've got, of course, some dazzles. So if you don't have a die cut to cut out your squares, putting dazzles and then little dazzle circle jewel dazzles kind of covers up the boogers. So that's what I did there. And then some stamping and embossing, and also on the inside, using those extra squares, and then a little Halloween poem, and then some black embossed bats on there. So everything nicely coordinated. This is a stamp set from Hampton Arts, so Halloween stamp set. And I was going to do a quick card video for this technique, but if you were to change the patterns, you'd get something like this. And then on the inside, you use smaller squares. So again, squares and squares, and more dazzles. So I've got a dazzle focal on this one as well. Of course, if you've got other die cut shapes, a hexagon works really pretty too. Really nice fall cards. And then I've got one for Christmas using diamonds. So they're all made the same way, so there's really no need to do a separate video, but a great go-to kind of backdrop for anything pretty much. Okay, now I think we're ready to move into card number 4, if I'm counting correctly. So let me clear this out of the way, leave photos, and I'll be back. So here's card number 4 in our roadmap, and it's calling for a vertical slice. So cutting my panel in vertical strips. And this says 1 inch. Again, I'm going to change this up. What I want to do is a cutaway card. So the front of my card is going to be shorter. And I decided to make that 3.5 inches on my 5-inch width. And so I started with a base that was 8.5 by 6.5, and then scored it at 5 again. And that gives me the back of my card, and my front is just a little bit short. So I'm going to use one of my panels, and I think this one is cut to 2 3/4 wide. So 2 3/4 wide, kept the full height, but I went ahead and stamped it a little bit. So again, using a different set of Hampton Art stamps, but just kind of give it a little more interest. Of course, I'm going to have to mat it. I'm going to bring in some specialty paper. My focus this time is going to be on spiders and spider webs. So I found this kind of spider webby looking specialty cardstock. So I'm going to have this like this. And then with a cutaway, what I love about cutaways, actually when I stamped this, I stamped the whole thing, but I'm not going to use this piece, because what I love about cutaways is here you kind of have a protected area, so you can use some chunkier pieces. So again, I've got the same specialty cardstock, just kind of chunked it up down here with some buttons and some sequins and a ribbon, and so that's going to go here. So let me kind of get that situated. I do have a focal ready. He's going to be a spider, so I've kind of pieced him together. Kind of looks like a jellyfish a little bit, but bear with me. I'll get him on there and probably add a couple spider webs and actually be back with the finished card. So this will be card number 4. In finishing up this card, the only other thing I wanted to add was some pattern paper. So I introduced purple. I actually introduced purple in the stamping. So I've got some purple spiders in the purple spider webs and some gray. So this pattern coordinates with his legs with just strips of paper that I used a crimper on. And then got specialty material here from Paper Wishes. It's a black suede, so really stands out above the card because the card's actually pretty busy. Some spider webs. The dies come from China. I root around on eBay, and so the set of dies probably cost me $1.20. And also did a black suede spider over here. Now, most of the embellishments, Paper Wishes. It's an embellishment bottle. This is just peachy, so I used elements out of that. And on the inside, just salutation. I have a tag punch and a coordinating stamp. So, introduce that here. Anyway, really cool, really pretty. Gonna move right into the next one. So we're almost finishing up here. I'm gonna stick pretty close to script in that it's calling out for another broken kind of panel. And so I got 1.5 inches on one corner from both sides and then a 1/2 inch. And then you just kind of need to figure out, first off, which side of the pattern you're going to use, and then also how you're going to orient it. And then you just mark off 1.5 inches from one corner and a 1/2 inch from the other corner and slice. That was a little bit of an abrupt departure, but I wanted to leave you those photos. Anyway, I did go a little farther. I am backing these onto a holographic paper because what I want to do now is some spooks. So I've got some ghosts here that I die cut, the Fun Fall framelits again from Stamping Up, but I die cut them on patterned vellum. And before I die cut them, I back the vellum with that transfer sheet again because it's really not a double-sided sticky sheet. It's got little dots. So I know these little dots are going to show up behind my ghosts. Of course, I've got little googly eyes that I added to them. So they're going to be flying around. And the other thing I want to say is boo. And so I've got my large letters here. I did a set in black and a set of orange. And so before I actually commit to putting everything on, I'm going to look at my card base. So we've got a wide tent fold this time. So same card structure as the tall book fold we've been using, but you just want to tilt it this way. I've got a black mat that I've gutted. I'm going to use that on the inside. And then I've got this piece. Introduce that sparkle again using an orange Sharpie marker to turn it from yellow to orange. And probably before I put anything on here, the other thing I want to do is wrap. So let me take a photo of these elements. I'm going to finish the card and I'll be back. I had a bit of an unexpected result after I put the vellum ghosts, peeled off the backing layer and put them on there. Depending on how you look at it, the angle at which you look at this card, you're either going to see ghosts or you're going to see 3 pairs of googly eyes. So, kind of neat. Kind of actually a neat little effect. Added a big old bow and some twine here. And then on the inside, just backed a dazzle with, again, another printed vellum. So, really pretty. So that's the 5th card. And I'm going to leave photos of that. And now moving into the last and final card, number 6, and all it's calling for is a die cut. And so I got a die cut from China. Let me move back a little bit. So in this last one, I had this pumpkin die cut. And I thought it was really pretty, but this is a pretty large card. And I think I've done 3 tall and 2 wide. So let me do one more wide card. And all I've done is cut myself another pumpkin, kind of layered up in different colors. So I've got some foam squares, and then when I put it onto the front of my card, I'm going to have some pieces flat onto the panel, and then others raised up. So I've got that piece ready. I've also got the base of the card ready because there's only one more panel left. I've got no more cards to do, so I might as well use what I've got. So here's that last panel from the OSW. And then I've got a cutting die. This is a strip die from Scissors. So it's called, I think, Vine number 2. And so I use that to border this. And again, some of that dotted pattern paper from Stampin' Up, this time in the garden green. And I already finished the inside because this is what I've got here. So let me stick this onto my card front, be back with the finished collection, and then I want to show you the collection that inspired this 12 by 12. So here's the set of 6 that we just finished in this video, and it comes together very quickly when you've got a road map. So kind of as I promised, what if you used a different paper? And actually this paper comes from Paper Wishes, and it comes from the Mystic Garden collection. And it is double-sided, but the two sides, while complementary to each other, are really different. And so this is actually how I built my OSW. Now when you're building yours, you want to kind of consider your finished card sizes. But anyway, kind of going back from number 1, so I've got my raised focal, this time an oval. I've got the raised mat, this time creating like a shadow box with these butterflies inside. And actually there is a piece of acetate on that. As I alluded to when I was building this patchwork, this was kind of how it was intended. So in a single panel, just divide it up. I've got the sentiment on a raised piece and everything's matted. Over here on my cutaway, so just 3 of a kind for this cutaway. Again, the top or the front is thinner than the full card, and then the greeting or salutation over here. For my cut panels, this time I've got a card, kind of like a road kind of thing going on, but real similar, since I didn't change that one up too much, other than kind of directional. And then lastly, I've got my die cut, so using a floral die cut with these papers. Of course, when you've got more contrast, you can possibly get some die cards out of the same thing. But no matter what you do, this is a great way, quick and easy, to build a collection of cards, and so I hope you give it a try. Thank you for watching.